Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Okay, so this is going to really offend me, as usual. I have overdone my talk, so yes, but it's, as you can see here, it's hideously stretched and this typography is nasty, so I'm really sad in my heart. This is me. That's what I look like. You can see me here spinning around in midair, and I'm like a sort of dorky ninja or something out of The Matrix. I actually got my tongue sticking out. I don't know if you can see that. That's the classiest part. I put this picture, I was here in CES in Las Vegas last week, and I put this up for two reasons. One of which is because I went to CES to look about Internet of Things products, and so that's relevant, because that's what I'm going to talk about. And the other reason is because there's some bits of this talk which is so embarrassing to me that I thought I might as well just get it out quickly, and hopefully this will be the most embarrassing that I feel, most embarrassed that I feel during this thing. So this is the subject I'm going to be talking about. How do we want to communicate with the world of connected objects? And I'm going to be doing a breakout afterwards about that particular thing. But in this talk, I want to focus on one area in particular, which is about objects with personalities, objects with expression. But before I get really into that, I want to tell you a little bit about a project I did called House of Coats. And to do that, I need to give you a bit of background. So the story starts with a company that I formed a couple of years ago with an old friend called Matt Biddulph. We called the company Product Club. We didn't know what we were going to do with it at first. We just knew that we liked working with one another and that we wanted to find a project together that would make us both excited and which we thought could be a success. Now, we'd done a few projects in the past that had got us quite a lot of, street cred, nerd cred, but they weren't hugely successful. So we really wanted to change that. To put it another way, we were bored of being critically celebrated. We wanted a breakaway pop hit. So, and maybe get a bit of credibility at the same time. So with this in mind, we started a year of interesting little projects. Matt made a mobile phone. Turns out people have done that before. So that wasn't a huge product success. We did a project, an app called Query, which was a local Q&A app, which some people who were here might remember because we actually demoed it for the first time at SCS a couple of years ago. We decided that wasn't big enough or sexy enough to be our Taylor Swift in this particular case. Not that she's big. We did an awesome project with TV, which I think is actually too complicated to tell about, but we worked with lovely Greg Borenstein, who some of you might know, and he is awesome. You should work with him. This is using machine vision to interpret live TV and composite interesting things over the top of it, and we made some actual work for people for money as well. We did a project for Jawbone, which was a coffee tracking app that you could do physics inside. So we did a lot of these projects, and then one of the projects that the areas we really cared about was the Internet of Things, and we did a lot of projects in that space, playing with various elements of it. And one of the experiments we did in that space, and not even a very big one, was a project called House of Coats. Now, this is my house. It's my house at its most tidiest, and with the largest widescreen camera I could find to make it look larger than its 800 square feet, which is what it is. And the idea I had was to try and live with an internet-connected home. And so I went out and bought all the objects I could find to go in my house. I got Wemo switches from Belkin, a sensor called Twine that tracked vibration and temperature, stuff like that. I hooked up my Withings bathroom scale. I found a motion sensor, used bits of Apple's Find My Friends app to send emails to Gmail, and I joined all of this together with If This Then That to kind of create a Twitter account for my home. And lo, this Twitter account was born. So this is House of Coats. So the point of this, and it's up live now, is that it essentially narrativizes my house. It tells what switches are pressed, what the temperature is, when I'm there or not, when there's motion in the house. It's been pretty carefully scripted to cover up all the gaps and errors and the problems that I couldn't figure out ways to get information out of. So for example, I couldn't tell whether if a light was switched on, it was switched on because I pressed a button, or because a rule was done, or because someone else pressed a button, because I did it on my phone. Completely impossible to determine that stuff, so I just pretended, hand-waved, and had the house say, we turned on the light because it was getting a bit dark in here. So lots of it is kind of smoke and mirrors. And it's full of stuff that's sort of like held together with string and chewing gum. which explains really why at the moment only half of it is working, and at any given time, barely half of it is working. And so the weirdest part about this process was trying to work out what the feel of the house should be like, how it should talk, what was its voice, what its tone was like, how would I want it to engage with me in my life. So for example, when there was motion in my house, I got it to tweet at me. It would say essentially, "Hello, Tom Coates, there's motion in the house, is that you?" And that was great because it meant that if I was out and there was some motion in the house, I would get notified, and it's basically the world's cheapest burglar alarm. It was less good when I was at home because, you know, I kind of knew I was there and there was really no way to tell it that. Nonetheless, I also didn't, because people were coming in and out of my house fairly regularly, I didn't want it to be shouty or intrusive or weird or alarmist. So I kept trying to find ways of making it communicate in a sort of calm and reasonable tone of voice that wouldn't freak me out. So trying to find this voice that would work in most circumstances and would feel friendly and approachable. And after a while, I found myself really enjoying the presence of this little house talking to me. And it felt like a bit of security. Like when I was away, if there was a problem, I could glance online and see what was going on. But it really felt like I was building a bit more of a relationship with the house. An environment that would normally be mute and distant. When I wanted to find out about it, I could just go and look online. And when it wanted to tell me something, it could intervene in my normal workflows and communicate with me. Weirdly, I wasn't the only person to start building an emotional relationship with my house. Turns out members of the public were actually starting conversations with my house, which was a bit odd. Occasionally, I would freak them out by responding in the house's tone of voice. That was always quite entertaining. They were never quite sure what was going on. But I have to be honest with you, whatever this kind of thing was, it wasn't a particularly big deal for me. It was a small project of a small section of a year's work. So I talked about it at a couple of conferences as an illustration of some of the things you could do if you connected objects to the internet, and then I left it at that. Then this happened, and it's a little article in MIT Technology Review. And in the article, this woman, Rachel Metz, the journalist, just really seemed to get it. The stuff that I'd found interesting and appealing about it, she just really resonated with it. She loved the idea of like building a relationship with your home. She understood what I was trying to get at in this kind of small experiment, and wrote it up in a very pleasant and appealing way, and that was nice. And unfortunately, or fortunately, that also triggered a whole bunch of other people to be interested. So this is, I don't know if anyone knows Metro in London. It's the free newspaper that goes out on the tube in London. It goes out every day, and it's read by millions of people. This was a 2-page spread in the center of the magazine about my house and the kind of things and conversations I had with it. Now, again, I was a bit surprised by the way this stuff was handled because, again, this was a very sensitive and intelligent piece that said, here are the things that this could do for you. Here are the ways it could build a relationship with your home, make you feel more comfortable, make you feel more at ease with things. And it's so easy. They could have so easily gone with a completely different angle. Like, look at this ridiculous fat bearded man in San Francisco who talks to his house. Like, that's entirely plausible angle for a story. And if anyone was going to write it, I would totally identify with that. Actually, it's probably more accurate than this one. But actually, no, it just seemed to get it. It just seemed to understand what I was trying to do and really resonated with it. After this came literally dozens of other articles, newspaper articles, magazine articles, blog posts, the like. Many involved people wanting to interview me and come around to my house and see the little house. And they were always very surprised when they got there that it was basically just a normal house with a couple of switches around the place and all the clever stuff was happening in the cloud. And I kept saying to my business partner, look, this is a small project that I did on the side. I don't really want to do all these things because it's a bit embarrassing. I don't want it to be on my gravestone, like Tom Coates, he talked to his house, That might be weird, right? But he was like, no, we're starting a company, it's a good thing, go out there and do the press, blah, blah, blah. And this, for example, is an illustration about my house from an article in Wired magazine. And this is where it all started kicking off and getting particularly weird. I ended up being on Chinese television and various other things. And then this is the New York Times real estate section, front cover of the real estate section. And you can see this guy was in my house all day, basically trying to make me not look awkward and uncomfortable. And as you can see, He totally failed. And then it got even more weird, and this is the day when CNBC came round and interviewed me for a TV program they were making. This is the most embarrassing
What
thing.
if someone or something were watching you in your home? Silently, secretly, observing your every move. Knowing what you do, when you do it, and the moment you walk out your door.
God, I hate this so much.
That's the idea behind smart homes, which watch how you live and try to make your life easier.
This is like a couple of minutes long. I'm going to play you all because it's so
Tom
awful.
Coates simply wants
I like roll
his
my eyes
home
here. I'm like,
to speak to him.
I have a fairly conversational relationship with my house. I really like that.
Blogger and web entrepreneur has rigged his small San Francisco home with a handful of sensors that let him know through his home's own Twitter feed what's happening when he's not there.
I'm just going to, oh no, hang on. Shit. Yeah, so the weird thing about that particular bit, if I can, I can't figure it anymore. The weird thing about that particular bit was that I'm just going to, oi, behave. The weird thing about that particular bit was this woman I was talking to, this woman Melissa Lee from CNBC, she was interviewing me. She was so nice and so sensible. And she was like, so why are you doing these things? That's interesting. Tell me more. I'm trying to do my American accent, so don't be offended. And she was talking through all this kind of stuff. And then the camera came on, and she just went completely insane. Her eyes just got 5 times as large. She was like, oh my God, that's so awesome. I just don't understand what's happening here. And she just asked me all these ridiculous questions. And, so freaky. And I kept teasing her about things, like, oh God, Melissa, you got in the way of the camera again. But she was very good-natured about the whole thing. Anyway, it's a really weird process. I went to have a taco, and they filmed me having a taco. And they filmed me like 3 times walking into the taqueria and sitting down. And then this family with kids were like, are you in a movie? And I was like, no, this is just the worst thing that's ever happened to me. It's just so mortifying and completely awful, to the extent that, in fact, this is less embarrassing to me, and that's why I put it in, right? Anyway, so what was all that about, right? So I've shown this kind of stuff because it's slightly funny, and partly because I think it illustrates something interesting, and something was a bit of a surprise to me, which was that this idea of an anthropomorphic home, or a home with a personality and a voice, really, really resonated with people. In way more than I thought it would. This was a little experimental project, but people really got this. I got almost no one. I did get a couple of people saying, why are you doing this? This is weird. Or this is strange or pointless. I got mostly people saying, oh, I wish my house could do that. I wish I could have conversations with my home. I wish I could get more of a sense of what my home is like and why it does the things that it does. I think the interesting thing for me was, why is this a particularly interesting way of manifesting the information in a home, as opposed to, say, buttons or touchscreens? So I have a few theories. Right. So quickly before I start, there are a lot of people I want to reference very quickly who have done really interesting work in this area and who I'm not going to talk about in significant depth. So Adam Greenfield and Mike Kuniavsky are 2 people who've done particularly interesting work in the sort of animistic or communicative elements of objects. Katie London, obviously, with botanicals, and a bunch of the ITP folks. Yuri Engerstrom, I don't know if he's still here, there's all this work on bringing social object theory into the digital world, and that sort of has a resonance and an implication. And particularly Matt Jones, who has done a lovely set of explorations of this space, and particularly in this article called The Demon Haunted World, which you can go and find on SlideShare. But this is basically the gist of what I'm trying to get to, is these 2 kind of basic concepts. Animism and the pathetic fallacy kind of mean roughly the same thing in different angles. Human beings have this sort of weirdly innate tendency to anthropomorphize things that they don't understand. And they use that personality they've constructed at the other end to negotiate with and form deals and relationships with. We treat nature and objects in the same way, fundamentally, as we treat other people, or at least, I do, which is as confusing, puzzling, different, and weird things, but maybe I can figure them out in time if I really try. That's how I think of all of you people, for example. Anyway, so this is, so we've all done it. We've all done that communication where we try and negotiate or argue with an object. How many of us here have sworn at our computer, "Why are you doing that? Stop doing that. I don't understand." When your cars stop working or are playing up, you're like, "Please, if you just get me to this meeting, I'll take you for an oil change. I'll give you a car wash. It'll be fine, And I think for me, the really interesting point is where we go with objects from not anthropomorphizing them when something is weird to when we do. What is that transition point? And I have an idea about that, and I think that idea is about inscrutability. We negotiate with objects when we don't understand why they're doing the things that they're doing. When they're too complicated to just go, well, the bulb's gone in the light, so I'll just replace the bulb. That's easy. I don't have to negotiate that. I don't have to try and persuade it. But when it's doing things that I don't understand, and for reasons I don't understand, we start resorting to this kind of human-to-human dialogue or kind of theoretical framework. And I think there is no other area currently in technology that is more inscrutable than the Internet of Things at the moment, particularly because with the Internet of Things, there is this weird sense of objects acting with intent. So, an example in my house. Like many of us, I have lights in my house. Lights are good. They help you see in the dark. But my lights are connected to the internet, and they're connected to the internet through a weird mishmash of systems and services. So one day I'm sitting at my desk in my office, typing away, doing things, and the light comes on. And I have absolutely no idea why. To this day, I don't know why that light came on. Sorry? Yes, probably you. Thanks. So anyway, I go and filter my way through every single one of the services and the rule-based systems that I use and try to find it. Cannot find it anywhere. I look to see if I've done a switch. Actually, in retrospect, I suddenly realized I think I know why it happened. I think it's Matt Webb in London, who I let stay in my house once and got the Wemo controls and then went home and just kept turning the lights on and off in my house for infuriating reasons. But at the time, it was inscrutable and confusing, and I had no way to understand it. Now, objects are starting to talk to one another, and they're starting to react to one another, which means every day there are more things that can happen in my home, in particular, and I expect, in your homes in the next 4 or 5 years, that you don't entirely understand why they're happening at first instincts. Objects reacting to other objects, reacting to your presence or absence, reacting to one another, optimizing themselves to try and make your life a bit better, but at the same puzzling you a bit, not being entirely clear why they're doing the things they do. And that's a problem, and it's a problem that we'll try and fix. But I think one of the reasons that we think about these things and the anthropomorphizing elements start to feel quite interesting is because if these objects could tell you why they're doing things in a human interfacey kind of way, it would feel more right. And I think that's because they already seem to have intent. They already seem to be doing things for reasons. And so something about that lends itself to more embodied or personalized kind of human-like activity. Another reason is these objects shout. These things feel more animistic. They feel more alive because the stream of information coming out of them is not continuous. It comes in discrete moments when an event happens. They react to things. They want to talk to you on their schedules. They may have messages that are urgent, so Nest, your house is on fire. I want to know that right away, right? Or less urgent, your washing is done. But this brings in this desire for an object to communicate with you at a time, and that means it starts investigating. It starts fitting in with questions about propriety and rudeness and how it intervenes or pushes into your life. So this is another reference for Matt Jones. It's a talk we did years ago about personal informatics, about quantified self stuff, and it was about the idea that we really want to build a world with this information where, yes, it looks nice, yes, it's relevant, but it's also polite. It's not pushing its way into our worlds and into our lives. And so when you start talking about politeness with objects, you're already starting to think about them in slightly humanistic, anthropomorphized ways. So I'll give you an example. One of my pet peeves, things that beep. I really do not like objects that beep. This is a washing machine that beeps when it's done. Does anyone have a washing machine that beeps when it's done? Does it continue to beep afterwards until you go and sort it out? God, I hate those. It's how rude is that? You're sitting there, you're having a nap, you're watching a TV program, you're feeling a bit sleepy and don't really want to just completely, immediately, this precise moment, go and cater to the needs of your bloody washing machine, and it just sits there plaintively wailing. It's like beep, beep. I mean, what the fuck? And there's nothing you can do about it. Essentially, it's communicating on its own channel, it's being intrusive, and it's being rude. Another example, I have a sort of obsession with robotic house cleaning devices. I have 5 of these robots now, which is, I think, more than I have rooms, because I don't live in a very large place. And they set them off, and they start cleaning, and then at a certain point, they get stuck, and they start beeping. Or if they don't beep, they do an even worse thing, which is this kind of voice, which I think is supposed to be modeled on the voice of the woman in Star Trek who does the computers. Just sort of goes like, error, move Roomba to a new location and press clean to restart over and over and over again. Now, I'm sitting in a chair, I'm doing some work, I'm halfway through a conference call, I'm watching TV. I don't want that to happen. It's infuriating. And it's really weird to me, actually, given how easy these things are to invest with personality and life. People give them nicknames, but they have this sort of slightly oddly matriarchal kind of voice that sort of yells, like when your mother just says something to you and your just spine just goes straight up, like, crap, yes, okay. When they do mum voice. This talks to you in mum voice. This is like literally, a friend of mine has a kid with my name. She does mum voice on the kid, and I just shoot straight up, like, oh crap, what have I done? It would be much better if these things talked to us in ways that we understood, through the channels that we understood. So it would be much nicer if they talked to us through our phones and through our notification systems, and could be understood in the same way as we understand human interaction. That actually, I want them to be polite, I want them to be discreet. Yes, let me know when something's happened, but don't expect me to run to the phone at this precise moment and talk to you and deal with the situation right this moment, unless it's really urgent. This is not a new idea, this is a very old idea from ITP. This is Courtney Love's Medicine Cabinet. And this is what it basically does, is it's got an IRC channel in the background, and it tracks how many pills are taken out of the medicine cabinet. And when a lot of pills have been taken out, when she says something in the IRC channel, it goes, don't listen to her, she's high. This is definitely not polite. It's, in fact, incredibly judgmental, but it's kind of funny. So we've used anthropomorphism. So the point I'm trying to get to is that we can use anthropomorphism, God, Jesus, to combat inscrutability, to make objects understandable and comprehensible. And we can we can encourage sensitivity to human behavior, make them act in more human ways to be polite and discreet. But I think there's another reason this stuff can be really good, and that is bonding. That actually you can form a more strong relationship with the objects in your life if they act in a way that is appealing to you, and if you can relate to them in a slightly more humanistic way. But I think these emotional bonds are extremely powerful and very real. But they're not without risks, and my go-to person for risks in this area is terrifying modernist Adam Greenfield, writer of the book Everywhere. And I think the idea to him of a world of objects that communicate and just sort of intrude on his life, being chirpy all the time, is possibly the worst thing that could ever happen. This is a man for whom, I think he would find that absolutely repulsive. He wants a world of pure white and, featurelessness in which he can think deep thoughts. That sounded scathing, it wasn't meant to. And I think there are some dangers in going too far down these directions and personalizing things too much. And I think I just want to end with a few bits of risk about how the world could look like without the presence of sort of neo-militant minimalism. There's this stuff, right? There's the absurdly cute. Do we want objects infantilized in this kind of way in our homes, being, chirpy and whimsical? This is the brave little toaster. I don't know if anyone's going to find this as funny as I do. I put it in, and now I realize it may have been an error. But this is a thing. Brothers, anyone know the Venture Brothers? One person, and it would have to be you.
Please do not be alarmed. We are.
Can we turn that up a bit?
Please do not be alarmed. We are about to engage the nozzle.
This is the nozzle.
Please do not move while the nozzle is engaging. Moving will disrupt calibration of the nozzle. Please Please wait while we calibrate the nozzle. Please do not look away. The nozzle is now calibrating.
This goes on a while.
The nozzle is still calibrating. The nozzle has completed calibration. Thank you.
Where's our pink-cheeked Junior man?
What was that thing?
I have no idea. Standard.
So, you know, like, so you've got this kind of infantilized vision of objects with like cutesy faces on them, and then you have this kind of utterly brutalist, kind of like oddly inhuman, uncanny valley voice of like messages from your Roomba. You know, please do not stand in the way of the Hoover. Like, it's unacceptable. And then, of course, this is my favorite, like, absolute nightmare for someone like Adam Greenfield and modernists everywhere, which is just, you know, is this the future we really want? You know, cheerful teapots.
With dessert, she'll want tea.
So these are the risks, right? This is the worst end of the future of inherent objects that we have to deal with. Anyway, I find this, you know, sort of wonderful, but also you know, this is not a future I particularly want. And so luckily, there are people who are trying to fix this stuff, and this is for those people who wanted to know what Matt and I were working on, have decided to work on in the end. This is what we're working on. We're working on a better system for all this kind of stuff, and it's called Thington. So thank you very much. I will be doing a session afterwards about ways to interact with smart objects, and that's all. Thank you.